Chapter 19. The amazing rumors swept through Dutch Springs like prairie fire. A dozen gargled versions were repeated in dives near down Main Street. It reached the sheriff's ears as he sat on a stool in the Chinese restaurant behind his smoking stack of flapjacks. The line was abandoned. An excited teamster relayed the news as he swallowed a cup of coffee. He'd picked it up in the yard. Corroboration came from others. Soon the entire restaurant was buzzing with the news. Pat, placidly packing away flapjacks, lost not a word. Deep inside he was conscious of a surge of joy. The impossible had occurred. Powder Valley would be returned to the ranchers. Dives and dance halls would melt away, and once again cattle would be king. He checked his rising enthusiasm. This was probably no more than a wild rumor inspired by news that the construction camp was moving. He slid off the stool and pushed through the curtains. Men were gathered in knots on the plank walk. Already a pall had seemed to descend upon the dives as though they had heard their death knell. One saloon bore a large, hastily lettered sign, "For sale, cheap." The sheriff headed for the yard. Stanton, the soldiery operator, was on duty in the telegraph office. "What's the lowdown on this yarn about quitting construction?" inquired Pat. "It's right here." Stanton fingered a wad of flimsies, extracted one, and extended it towards his visitor. Pat spread the yellow page on the plank counter. With quickening interest he read. G. McAllister, Chief Engineer, Dutch Springs. Consolidation with C and RG rejected at special meeting of Overland stockholders. Directors have decided to abandon all trackage north of Eagle Creek and proceed with original surveys. Stop all construction immediately and cancel local contractor. Further instructions will follow. Walsh, Superintendent. The sheriff whistled softly. "Say, that'll cost the Chicago and Rio Grande plenty." "They got plenty," grunted Stanton indifferently. "I gamble plenty of Jaspers lost their shirt there at Indian Flats. Land was been skyrocketing up over there, and the camp was due to move on pronto." The rumor hit Bill North with the impact of a .45 caliber bullet as he was descending the stairwell of the Jewel Hotel. Jabbering men packed the lobby. Snatches of talk drifted to his ears. "Pulling out for keeps. Overland never would work with the CRG. Crazy schemes anyway." His stomach shrank into an icy knot. He pushed towards the desk, where Shackleteeth Simpson, the clerk, blinked behind steel-rimmed spectacles. "What's all the fuss about?" he demanded. "Ain't you heard?" The old clerk's false teeth chattered like chestnuts. "The railroad's pulling out. No more steel in Powder Valley. The coyotes got it all back. Hooray, says I." North stood motionless, faculties paralyzed as he grasped the extent of the calamity. Shackleteeth forgot his excitement at the look of the horror on the young man's face. He grabbed North's arm and shook it violently. "Hey, snap out of it, mister." North turned away and headed like automation towards the street. Unseeingly, he stared ahead as he pushed his way through a group of chattering men. It was impossible. Inconceivable. The Chicago Rio Grande was scheduled to link up with the Overland. It had extended millions in construction. Plans were laid for the next jump forward to Indian Flat. There was a mistake somewhere. This must be a mistake, otherwise he was ruined. Every dollar he owned was tied up in land around Indian Flats, land that was worth $1 an acre, according to Pat Stevens, and he had paid 20. The bubble had burst. He drifted down to the bucket of blood, elbowing through the throng that clustered along the bar and ordered a bottle of red-eye. The fiery liquor, instead of downing his despair, intensified it. With lackluster eyes, he downed drink after drink. Yesterday, he thought bitterly, he was a millionaire on paper. Today, he was a pauper. Sickened by the whiskey, on empty stomach, he pushed the bottle away and leaned on the bar, head cradled upon his hands. The drone of conversation around beat upon his ears. Dully he listened to the loud talk of those who jostled him on either side, and then a remark burned upon his brain and jerked his head around. A sober-faced gambler was talking in a flat monotone. "You can't trump LaRoe's ace. He's as slick as a new deck. He loaded up on Indian flat lots and sold them all at fancy prices. I know I bought one. He wouldn't deal unless I promised not to record it for a month. How do you figure that one?" "Well, no one could ever figure LaRoe," chuckled another. But the words died on North's ears as he thrust away from the bar. So LaRoe had double-crossed him. Damn his crooked soul. The young ex-paymaster's strong hands clenched and unclenched as a black rage possessed him. He'd tear that slimy buzzard to pieces, smash his hatchet face to a pulp. Dark eyes smoldering, he searched the saloon and sighted LaRoe's tall figure by gambling tables. Swiftly, he strode over the sanded floor. The saloon keeper was talking to Silky Shelby. Seated, the still-faced gambler was idly shuffling a deck of cards. At North's approach, he hissed a warning. LaRoe's small eyes flickered over the tall figure that threaded purposely through the table. His right hand slid beneath his black coat, but he greeted North with the usual stock smile. "So, we're all cleared out, busted," barked the young fella. LaRoe shrugged. "Well, that's the way the cards fall." "For me, but not for you, you dirty double-crosser." North's voice was strained with passion. He moved closer, fist bunched. "I'm gonna smash you, LaRoe." The saloon man's hand dropped out from beneath his coat, light reflecting upon the blue steel of a derringer. Before he could use it, North's right fist pistoned into his stomach. With a grunt, LaRoe doubled like a folded ruler to stop an uppercut that snapped his head back and glazed his eyes. North leapt forward like a tiger to slash the swaying form, and something crashed against his ear. And LaRoe dissolved into a myriad pinpoints of dancing light, and then darkness enveloped his numbed senses. He did not see Silky sliding his clubbed gun back into its shoulder holster, or the angry-eyed young woman who flung herself like a wildcat upon the startled gambler. North returned to consciousness with a groan. His head felt like a seething cauldron of lead. He fingered it gingerly and encountered wet claws. Hazily he stared around. He was laying on a yellow bed, screened by a hanging blanket. Brow wrinkled, he strove to recall events. Fuzzily he remembered drinking in the bucket of blood and hitting LaRoe, and then oblivion. But where was he now? This was no hotel room. A slim white hand pulled the curtain aside, and Maggie Maloney appeared with a basin of water. North frowned at her in bewilderment. What happened? Where am I?" he croaked. "Silky conked you in the bucket of blood," returned Maggie in a matter-of-fact voice. "And you're in my cabin. Now, make a scandal out of that. I got back from Sam's place just in time, it seems." She deftly unwrapped the towel from his head and wrung out another and laid it upon his throbbing forehead. "You'll soon be as fit as a fiddle. Silky knows just how hard to conk a guy. He should, the snake. He's had plenty of practice." North's eyes followed her as she bustled around the bed. "Say, he said slowly. I just can't figure you out. Maggie smiled and patted the pillow to better support his head. Don't try. Just get some sleep. Leroux tricked me. He'd double-cross his own mother. You heard about the railroad? Seems I've lost every dollar. She stood above him, dark eyes soft, as she read the despair stamped upon his features. You'll make plenty more, big boy, she assured him lightly. Now get some sleep. She pulled the blanket back into place and left him. The cabin was in semi-darkness when North again woke. His head pounded like a hammer when he rolled off the bed, and he staggered slightly as he moved to the window, but he could think coherently. It was dark outside. Maggie Maloney had disappeared. He stuffed his pipe and settled into a chair thinking, and his thoughts were not on Leroux or his blasted hopes or even of the bewildering Maggie, but of a fat, middle-aged Lothario, belly bulging over his belt, staring into the black muzzle of a gun. Finally, North's worried brow cleared and his decision was made. He rose, knocked the dottle out of his pipe, and then gently eased on his Stinson. Still shaky, but stepping out with more assurance every minute as he inhaled the cooling breeze that soured down from the umbrellas, North headed for the glare of Main Street. Now, in the first shearing shock of his misfortune had passed, a feeling of calm possessed him. You'll make plenty more, Maggie had said. Little did she know. Gambler's gold, it came easy and melted fast. It was greasy gold. Slipped through a feller's fingers like quicksilver. Well, he was through with that. His thoughts flew to Maggie. There was a world of understanding in those deep, dark eyes. She was like a gorgeous rose, warm and glowing with life. Sure, June had beauty too, but glazed with ice. He left the friendly darkness and hit the plank walks, drifted along beneath the lights, watching the motley crowd of men spend their last dollars in Dutch springs that were in the vanishing dives. A finger tapped the ex-paymaster's shoulder and a lazy voice drawled. I've been looking for you. North turned. At the sight of the sheriff, he smiled wearily. I was looking for you, too. I have a confession to make. Murder? North nodded with a tired smile. Gosh, if his head would only quit throbbing. He swayed back and forth, and Pat grabbed his arm, steered him towards the courthouse. The two faced each other in the little lean-to. The sheriff swung around in his swivel chair. North, big frame, slumped in a straight-back chair, hopeless resignation in his eyes. Wet your whistle. Pat fished out a bottle from a desk drawer and pulled the cork with his teeth. North stretched out his hand gratefully and drank deep and passed the bottle back, and the liquor brought life into his eyes. How'd you know? He spoke as indifferently as if he was discussing the weather. Just horse sense, I guess. Wisner bolted himself in the armored car with the payroll. He opened up and sat down behind his desk and never drawed his gun. That meant he recognized the feller he let in and was mighty sure it was a friend. Who would he open up to with a safe full of gold except Glencourt or you? Glencourt was in town and you were alone. But you stuck your own neck in the noose. Remember the morning after he was killed? I routed you out and told you that he was plugged. I didn't say killed. You come right back with, so Wisner's dead? You knew. So then I checked up on this. The sheriff pulled a creased yellow sheet from the dress drawer. North glanced at it indifferently. Identity established, changed name before proceeding to Chile. Full report, followed by mail, Acme. You claimed it was about your brother. Acme proved you a liar. You'd been checking in on Wisner. His name was Langsworthy once, and he changed it to Wisner and hit for Chile and came back and signed up with the Chicago Rio Grande. And they gave you a full report. I don't know why, or nor do they, but you knew him before you come to Dutch Springs, and my guess is that you came to croak him, and maybe you can tell me why. Pat paused, built a smoke, his gray eyes focusing on North. The young fellow pulled out his pipe and stuffed the bowl. Couldn't figure the motive, and the other payroll hijacking coming right after, followed the sheriff. It kind of threw me off the trail for a while. A feller like you don't kill for fun, and the coin never come to light till you loaded it at Indian Flats. I calculated to give you enough rope to hang yourself, and you did. And lost every flippin' dollar, injected North. Pat rattled the jail keys. Well, I reckon that's all, unless you want to talk. It was my intention to make a clean breast of the whole affair, returned North calmly. My hands were not altogether red. I dealt justice even if it looks like murder. Wisner was my father. He paused. I'm his illegitimate son. He lured my mother from her home and then left her alone in New York. She was too proud to appeal to her family and had to earn a living by waiting in Bowery restaurants, washing dishes, and sweeping floors. His voice faltered and recovered. And then her health failed, but until the day she died, she worked to keep body and soul together decently. I was only a child, but I understood her struggle. I swore then that I'd get the man who dragged her down. Well, and I got him, but it was a long, long chase. Stealing the payroll was an afterthought. I thought it would hide the motive. I buried it beneath the car, but I forgot the gun. Guess I got kind of panicky because I pitched the spent shell into the stove and then tossed the gun into the brush outside. That nearly tripped me up. You remember the Pinkerton detective? He smiled crookedly. They say there's never a perfect crime. Silence lay heavy in the little lean-to as North finished. Pat studied him without speaking. Restlessly beneath the scrutiny, the young fellow jerked nervously to his feet. Well, I guess I'm ready to hang, hopefully with a smile. Pat motioned towards the door. Vamoose, he drawled. North stood stock still, staring at the lean-faced sheriff in amazement. I don't understand, he stammered. Git, grunted Pat. Wisner had it coming. I'll call it justified homicide. Forget Wisner. I have. End of chapter 19.